With the announcement of Persona 3, 4, and 5 coming to all platforms, it's reignited some hype surrounding the series. These ports will likely be the most accessible way to play the modern Persona games, but what about the rest? What's the best way to play those games? There's also some contention over whether the versions Atlus chose to port are the best versions of their respective games. Some people are die-hard fans of the original releases, some people are all for the additions and changes of the updated enhanced counterparts, and some people are mixed. I decided to give my opinions on this topic. I'll be going through each of the main numbered Persona games, going over each of the versions, and giving my thoughts on which version I think is the most ideal experience. This'll be a bit of a drier video, but I figure I might as well put something out while I'm working my way through another project I have planned. Please note that for this video, I will not be taking any mods into account aside from translation patches. I'm always of the mindset that new players should generally experience games without any mods the first time around. Small tweaks like HD textures are understandable, but anything impacting the gameplay is entirely off limits. So I don't want to see anyone in the comments saying, "You should play this version of the game with these mods," or anything of the sort. Mods are honestly worth an entirely separate video that I'll consider making in the future. I don't have a clever segue into the first game, so let's just get started with the first game. Megami Ibunroku Persona is not the game we got here in the West. We got the localized Revelations Persona. Some people are fine playing the original Japanese version with the script, but honestly, that kinda takes me out of the immersion personally. Kinda makes it feel like I'm experiencing the game through a text file rather than the game itself. For the most part, I wouldn't recommend that unless you actually know Japanese. There have been a few attempts to translate the original Japanese version without the localizations of the version we got, but all progress on those projects have ceased and all trails of the people who started said projects have gone cold. That leaves us with Revelations Persona, and the PSP remake simply shortened to Persona. Revelations Persona has a number of modifications for localization. The most obvious change was the changes to the characters' names and designs. Money values have also been converted from yen to dollars and the encounter rate has been lowered. This means you'll be getting much less money and experience in the long run. The final dungeon also only has one save point on the very first floor. The translation is rough as well due to the English development team being extremely small. It got so bad to the point where they had to cut out the entire alternate story route. You can still initiate it with cheats, but that's not a good idea. The game will glitch out a lot. Battles are also pretty slow due to how long and drawn out the Persona summoning animations are. Like, they look cool and all, but I'm trying to play a game here. So what even makes this version of the game worth playing then? Well, the biggest point of contention is the music and overall sound design. I'll admit, the audio of the original PS1 version of the game is more impactful and satisfying. A huge selling point of this game, in my opinion, is the atmosphere. It's such a huge part of the overall experience that it's hard for me to say this version of the game is completely obsolete. And because I know some annoying little worm in the comments is going to mention it no matter what, there is a mod to restore most of the music of the original game for the PSP version. That's about 70% done. Most of it is just for the Sebek route. But I am not factoring this into my final decision, and you shouldn't base your decision purely based on this or any other mod. I won't be mentioning any more mods from this point forward. As for the PSP version itself, there are plenty of pros that make it worth playing over the original. For one thing, the battle grid as well as the area of effect for your skills is actually visible in this version. Pressing start on the battle screen will also speed up the animations immensely, which is super nice. In complete honesty, the battles in this game are way more satisfying to look at sped up. While the UI is less stylish than the original game, it is more user-friendly. Your movement in dungeons is also much faster. Just walking at normal speed is sufficient enough, but if you really want to, you can hold the dash button and really zoom through those floors. A difficulty option was added, but the only noticeable difference is that SP doesn't regenerate from walking on expert mode. The biggest addition of them all, of course, is being able to play the Snow Queen quest in English, and I do think it's worth experiencing, even with a guide. So my final verdict is this. If you only care about the Sebek story or only intend to play that route, choose either version. If you want to experience the game in its entirety, play the PSP version. For people who care about the music and sound design that much, do the Sebek route on the PS1 version, and play the PSP version just for the Snow Queen route. It'll be a good way to experience both versions and formulate your own opinions on each of the versions and their differences. If you're expecting me to tell you which version of Persona 2 Innocent Sin you should play for the best gameplay experience, I'd say, what gameplay experience? I wouldn't have a straight answer for you. The main differences between the PS1 original and the PSP version are in the battle system. The original PS1 version ran on a system where you would give all your characters commands from a single menu, and have the battle continuously play out until the player hits cancel to change commands. The PSP version replaces that with a more traditional inputting of commands for all characters individually, then commencing the round. And yes, you have to re-input the commands for all the characters even if you just want to change one character's command. Not that this will matter much though, you're pretty much just going to be pressing triangle and auto-battling through battles anyway, just like the original. The one big thing the PSP version does have over the original, however, is the option to skip battle animations by pressing start in battle. Though if you're playing these games emulated, you're going to be using the speed up feature a lot either way. If you want the battle system to be closer to that of Eternal Punishment for consistency's sake, I'd say play the PS1 version. Unlike the PSP version of Persona 1, Innocent Sin's PSP remake actually lets you choose between the new rearranged soundtrack and the original. If you're only interested in the story, then either version will work, I guess. Persona 2 Eternal Punishment is the first game in the series where I can say the remake is just a straight upgrade. That's not to say the PS1 version is terrible. In fact, the PSP remake is very faithful to the original game. The battle system is one-to-one with the original, however the battle mode is set to turn-by-turn command prompts by default. You'll have to change that in the battle settings if you want the auto-repeat style of the original game. You can change the UI in this game to several different colors. You have default white, Innocent Sin red, Persona 3 blue, Persona 4 yellow, FemC pink, and Persona 1 purple. I think the purple one looks best for this game. Both versions of the game have a feature to skip battle animations, but I think the biggest thing the PSP version has over the original is the speed. Not just in battles, but the game in general. Load times are way faster than either both versions of Innocent Sin or the original Eternal Punishment in my experience. If you're up against a boss fight, however, I recommend setting the battle mode to single. Otherwise, the battle will be going way too fast for you to cancel out of an action in time. You'll want to put more thought into the commands you give in this game, unlike Innocent Sin. Eternal Punishment is essentially a one-to-one remake of the original that adds very small but impactful quality of life changes, and makes the extra content separate from the main game content. Most importantly, it doesn't remove anything from the original. This is something that a lot of Persona re-releases are just really bad with for some reason. It may not fix the more fundamental issues with the original, but I'd say Eternal Punishment on PSP is still a good remake, purely on the basis that I'm all for very faithful remakes. Persona 3 is unsurprisingly the most contentious one of the bunch when it comes to this topic. There are three versions of Persona 3. The original game released in 2006, the enhanced Persona 3 FES released in 2007, and the Persona 3 Portable remake for the PSP released in 2009. Persona 3 Fest follows the trend of many other enhanced re-releases at the time in Japan, such as Final Fantasy XII's Zodiac Job Class Edition and Kingdom Hearts 2 Final Mix. Like the two aforementioned examples, Persona 3 Fest actually succeeds in being a straight upgrade to the original game. Some additional events and cutscenes were added along with the addition of weapon fusion, and some reworking of social link availability, and a new social link. Also, just a little fun fact for you, a running trend in Persona 3, 4, and 5 is that the questions during school lectures are different in the enhanced re-releases compared to the originals. Persona 3 Fest also features a new scenario taking place after the events of the main story. It's a controversial addition, but I personally think it's fine. Even people who have no interest in playing the epilogue campaign will probably choose Fest over playing the original. So that settles it. Persona 3 Fest is the best version, right? Well, it's a bit more complicated than just that. Persona 3 Portable is probably the most drastic change you will ever see between any two versions of a Persona game. That being said, I think a lot of things about Portable get too much flack. At the same time though, there are changes about it that I really disagree with. Let's go over the negatives first. The most obvious one being the hardware limitations. Everything had to be compressed down to something the PSP can handle. Most people will point to the graphics and visual novel style first, but personally, I'm not really bothered by it that much. I'll go into more detail about it in another video, so I'll give you the Cliff Notes version. Functionally speaking, the point-and-click navigation and visual novel style dialogue is not that big a loss, but there is a certain charm about Tatsumi Port Island that's lost because of this. But let's be real here, we all know the real reason the visual novel style gets hate. It's because Mega 10 fans are allergic to reading. They also changed the camera angle in the dungeons for some reason, and I strongly disagree with it. It doesn't ruin the game or anything, but it is bothersome. The original Persona 3 as well as Persona 3 Fest had a battle system sort of like Eternal Punishment where you would give commands to your party from a single menu in advance before commencing the round. However, rather than giving precise commands like in traditional RPGs, you're given a set of tactics to manipulate your character's AI towards certain actions. This was a controversial style of combat that required the player to have a lot more foresight when giving their commands, which the game does give you the tools for. Persona 3 Portable cuts down on the number of tactics and simply adds the option for direct input for a more on-the-fly strategy to be more like Persona 4. Many people will say direct commands will make the game too easy, but if you're like me and can get the AI to do whatever you want either way, it really doesn't make that big a difference. I've got nothing against it. The guard command, on the other hand, does basically trivialize any sort of attack that would be threatening in the PS2 versions. The modifications to the gameplay are largely meant to make the game more like Persona 4, with many parts of the game being simplified. Sometimes unnecessarily, like in the case of how weapons are handled. However, there are plenty of positives that I can think of that make this version good. I've always stressed how reversing social links is important in keeping the relationship between the player and the characters from feeling superficial. What kind of friendship would that be if everyone just always agreed with you, or never got mad at you, or held you accountable for being a dick? I'm sure the people down on Twitter.com would like that. What ruins the mechanic for me personally, though, is the jealousy mechanic. In short, if you reach a certain rank on a girl's social link, they'll get mad if you spend time with another girl, and their social link will reverse. This can be pretty unforgiving, especially for a first-time player. While later games would just remove reverse social links outright, Persona 3 Portable simply removes the jealousy mechanic. This means the weight of your choices regarding your social links is still there, but it removes the factors that are out of your control. If one of your social links is reversed, it's all on you. The way it should be in my opinion. The other huge selling point of Portable is the option to play as the female protagonist. This option carries a lot more weight than you might initially think. In addition to some returning social links from the original, the female protagonist experiences many different social links from the male route. The female route also features new music, and a few parts of the story will play out slightly differently. Honestly though, the first two things alone are enough to make Portable worth experiencing. While I strongly prefer Persona 3 FES for its more bold, experimental nature and less hardware limitations, Persona 3 Portable is a totally viable option for people who lean more towards Persona 4's way of streamlining the gameplay. If you plan to experience the male route, I would suggest Persona 3 FES for the original intended experience. For those looking to experience the female route, Persona 3 Portable is very much worth playing just for that in my opinion. And to those coming to Portable from FES, Portable will provide an interesting twist and fresher experience than simply replaying FES. I think that's part of what makes Persona 3 such a great experience for me personally. The original Persona 4 largely follows the same game formula as Persona 3, but in a more simplified form. I thought it was a bit underwhelming when I first played it, but what's there isn't bad, it's just pretty insufficient for a widely more beloved successor in my opinion. This is yet another topic for another video I plan on elaborating more on in the future. Persona 4 Golden, on the other hand, feels like an actual attempt to expand upon the foundation of Persona 3, and while there are some things that I disagree with, most of which stem from the original Persona 4 anyway, I think it does a pretty good job. These all may seem like small things, but being able to walk around town at night and chat idly with your friends is such a nice thing to have. Being able to farm vegetables as a cheaper alternative to certain items, driving to new places on your moped, and experiencing winter in Inaba are just some of the things that I think make the Persona 4 experience more memorable than my first time playing the original. Even if you're not a big fan of the new character and her additions to the story, you are free to ignore that shit and virtually get the normal Persona 4 story experience and still enjoy a multitude of new features that Golden has to offer. Though there are some parts that feel like a double-edged sword. Persona 4 Golden is far more exploitable in terms of stack grinding and persona building. In Persona 3, stack grinding your personas actually took up time in-game, while in Persona 4 Golden, you can continuously grind shuffle time for stat gains for as long as you want. This in addition to cards that can upgrade your persona skills to insane shit you shouldn't have until late game. You can upgrade a persona with resist physical to null physical early on, and block like 1/3 of the attacks in the game. Admittedly though, exploiting the game is part of the fun of Persona 4 Golden. Persona 4 the original doesn't really have anything like that. It's very bare bones in terms of features, but maybe that's better for some people, skipping the nonsense and doing its job. Overall, between the two versions of the game, I'd pick Persona 4 Golden in a heartbeat. And now, the moment you've all been waiting for. There's only one objectively best way to play Persona 5, and obviously, it's on the Switch! There's literally nothing to say here, like, Persona 5 Royal's gonna be on everything. The only way to play the original Persona 5 is on PS3, PS4, or by emulating it on your computer, and that requires a really beefy PC. At least you could make a case for the original Persona 4 and Persona 3 FES because they're much easier to emulate. Here though, the answer is just simple. Persona 5 Royal is largely the same deal as Persona 4 Golden. Many of the changes are just better even if you end up ignoring new story content. I remember quite a few people were disappointed by how much time it took to really get to the new stuff. I guess that sucks for people who already played the original, but for first-time players, it's literally a non-issue. Once again though, Royal is unsurprisingly really exploitable in terms of its mechanics, even more so than the original from what I've heard. The difference here is that Persona 5 Royal's gameplay loses a lot of depth from a lot of the overpowered perks you get, which hurts it more than in the case of Persona 4 Golden. I guess the one big perk of playing the original Persona 5 is that it's really cheap these days. Overall, I'd say Persona 5 Royal is still the way to go. There's nothing for me to really close on, so I'd like to take this time to thank my patrons for their support. If you would also like to do a little extra to support the channel, you can pledge to my Patreon. I was originally planning to upload a video on Persona 4, but I ended up getting a review code for a game I wasn't expecting to get, so I'm concentrating on getting through that game first to make a video on that. You can probably guess what game I'm talking about, but I'll leave it at that. I'm now sitting on 2 projects, and I wanted to get something nice and quick out for you guys. I'll see you soon.